Do you remember being a child, lying in bed at night, staring into the dark? The silence of your room was never truly silent. It was alive. Every creak of the floor, every flicker of shadow on the wall felt like something watching you. The closet door left slightly open became a portal to another world, a place where your imagination birthed creatures you couldn't name. The dark didn't just hide, it whispered, and we trembled because we didn't know what lived inside it. And then, light. A lamp switched on, the golden crack of brightness under the door, the faint glow of dawn. Suddenly, everything changed. The same room, the same silence, but tamed. The monsters retreated, the fear dissolved. As children, light became our salvation. It was our first medicine, our first comfort, the signal that we were safe. But here's the truth we rarely admit. The light is not always gentle. We grow up believing light is purely good and darkness is purely bad. But that's only half the story. The light soothes us, yes, but it can also blind us. The darkness frightens us, but it also teaches us to imagine, to listen, to expand. Without the dark, light would lose its meaning. Without shadow, there is no shape. This is the paradox at the core of life itself. Yin and yang, two forces intertwined. One cannot exist without the other. They define each other. They breathe into each other. The circle keeps turning, and balance is found not in denying one pole, but in accepting both. Carl Jung understood this deeply. He warned that wherever there is great light, there is also great shadow. And for the empath, this truth is magnified. Your gift, the ability to feel deeply, to sense emotions others hide, to bring comfort like a flame in the night, comes with a cost. Because every flame burns. And sometimes, it burns the one who carries it. Think about it. Signs you are an empath often reveal themselves in childhood. The imagination that runs too fast, the tears shed for others' pain, the trembling sensitivity to moods no one else seems to notice. This sensitivity feels like a blessing, a rare gift. But over time, the same light begins to feel heavy. You sense more than you want to. You absorb more than you can carry. What once felt like brightness begins to scorch. Jung's Jungian psychology called this the pull of the unconscious mind, an invisible hand shaping our choices, binding us to patterns we never consciously agreed to. Trauma and empathy intertwine. The empath's inner child, still wide-eyed before the shadows, grows into an adult who carries everyone else's pain, mistaking exhaustion for purpose, mistaking sacrifice for love. And yet, there is another truth. This fire within you is not only destructive, it is also transformative. What threatens to consume you can also forge you. Just as fire can destroy forests but also create fertile ground for new life, the empath's light that burns is not a curse to erase, it is a force to master. This is where shadow work begins. The journey is not about extinguishing the flame, nor about worshipping the light blindly. It is about seeing both poles clearly, the comfort and the burn, the blessing and the burden. To understand that empathy without boundaries becomes fire without control. To realize that individuation, the process Jung described as becoming whole, is not about choosing the light over the dark, but about embracing both and letting them shape you. Because here lies the secret Jung revealed. Your true power as an empath is not found in hiding from the darkness, nor in clinging desperately to the glow. It is found in recognizing that both live inside you, and learning to let the fire illuminate without consuming, to let the shadow sharpen without swallowing you. So as we begin, ask yourself, what if the light you carry, the very gift that makes you who you are, is also the fire you must learn to master? Carl Jung often reminded us that the human soul is never one-sided. Every strength conceals a weakness, and every gift hides a shadow. For the empath, this paradox is unavoidable. What feels like light to others, the soothing presence, the unspoken understanding, the ability to carry emotions that are too heavy for the room, comes at a hidden cost. Because when you absorb the storms of others, you risk forgetting the sound of your own inner voice. In empath psychology, this is often mistaken for compassion at its highest form. People say, "You're so caring, you're so strong, you're the one everyone can lean on." But Jung would warn that this constant brightness is not wholeness. It's a mask that hides the unconscious mind pulling strings beneath the surface. The empath becomes a vessel for collective shadows, taking in what others repress, carrying what others deny. Here lies the danger. Trauma and empathy are not distant cousins. They are siblings. Many empaths discover their gift not through peace, but through pain. A childhood marked by instability, by caretaking too early, by silence that forced them to feel instead of speak. These wounds gave birth to sensitivity. The inner child, longing to be safe, learned to sense the smallest shifts in energy. And as an adult, that same child still whispers, "Stay alert, keep feeling, maybe then you'll survive." This is the light that burns. It comforts others, but it exhausts the one who holds it. Jung described individuation as the process of becoming whole, integrating both what we show to the world and what we hide. For empaths, individuation means learning that their gift is not pure light, but a fire bound to a shadow. Ignoring the shadow does not erase it. It only feeds it. That's why many empaths feel drained, invisible, or even resentful, because they are living only half their truth. Shadow work becomes the key. Jung saw it as turning to face what we fear, the anger we suppress, the boundaries we avoid, the resentment we bury. For empaths, shadow work means acknowledging that sometimes their compassion is fueled not by choice, but by old wounds. It means seeing that behind the healer there is also someone tired, someone longing to be healed. This isn't weakness, it's the other half of the circle, the yin to the yang, the shadow that gives shape to the light. And so, the empath's true journey is not to silence their gift or to escape it. It is to recognize both faces of it, the lantern that brings comfort and the fire that scorches. As Jung revealed, real power comes when you no longer run from either side, but hold them together. Because only then does your empathy stop being a curse and begin to transform into strength. In the last reflection, we saw how every gift carries two faces, the light that soothes and the fire that burns. For empaths, Jung's insight goes even deeper, because this gift does not simply exist, it feels owed. It becomes a duty, a silent contract written long before the empath had a choice. Think back to the inner child we spoke about. That child, born sensitive, grew up reading the room like a survival manual. If a parent's tone shifted, if tension entered the air, the empath child absorbed it instantly. Their body became a radar, their heart a shield. And slowly, without even knowing, they signed an invisible agreement. I will carry the feelings no one else can face. I will keep the peace. I will absorb the storm. This is what I call the hidden contract of the empath. No one writes it on paper, no one says it out loud, but it is enforced every day. Friends, partners, co-workers begin to rely on the empath as the healer, the listener, the one who always understands. The role becomes a cage. And because this pattern is rooted in the unconscious mind, the empath rarely notices they are living under terms they never agreed to. Jung would warn that this unconscious agreement is not kindness, it is compulsion. The empath believes they are choosing compassion, but in truth, the contract chooses for them. Trauma and empathy intertwine once again. What began as survival in childhood becomes obligation in adulthood. The empath no longer asks, "Do I want to carry this?" Instead, they assume, "I must." But here lies the tragedy. The hidden contract has no fine print, no end date, no boundaries. It demands everything and offers little in return. The empath gives and gives, until the fire of their gift consumes their inner world. This is why so many empaths describe feeling drained, unseen, or even invisible. Their light shines, but not for themselves. It burns only to illuminate others. And yet, Jung's psychology offers a way through. Individuation is the act of breaking false contracts with the past. Shadow work is how the empath looks at this invisible paper and finally says, I never signed this with my full self. I was a child. I was surviving. Now, I choose differently. The moment this realization surfaces, the contract begins to lose its power. The paradox returns. Empathy is not erased, but transformed. By facing the shadow, the fear of disappointing others, the guilt of saying no, the terror of being seen as selfish, the empath begins to reclaim their gift as a conscious choice rather than a silent burden. The flame no longer burns uncontrolled. It becomes a hearth, a light you can tend rather than a wildfire that consumes you. So the question Jung leaves us with is this. Will you continue to live under an agreement you never truly signed, or will you face the shadow, tear the contract, and finally choose what your empathy means? Crowds cheered, cameras flashed, and the world saw a smile that seemed unshakable. But behind that smile was a woman unraveling in silence. Princess Diana wasn't just a royal figure. She was an empath living under the weight of a contract she never consciously signed. She carried the grief of strangers as if it were her own, held the hand of the forgotten as though she could absorb their loneliness, and lit up rooms even as her own inner world was dimmed. Her compassion was her crown, but it was also her fire. The very light that drew people to her left her scorched inside. She confessed in interviews and in private diaries the depth of her despair, her eating disorders, her isolation. And yet, the world rarely saw that side. To millions, she was hope embodied, a healer, a comforter, a living symbol of love. Jung would have recognized this immediately, the mask of light concealing the presence of shadow. Diana's story illustrates the empath's paradox with painful clarity. Empathy gave her the ability to reach across barriers of class, culture, and stigma, but it also bound her to the suffering of others, leaving little space for her own healing. In Jungian psychology, this is the tension of opposites. The more radiant the persona, the heavier the shadow pressing underneath. History offers more names to echo this truth. Vincent van Gogh, painting beauty through the lens of his torment. Martin Luther King Jr., who carried the collective wound of racial injustice in his body and dreams. Empathy gave them vision, but it demanded a price. Their gifts illuminated humanity, but the fire often consumed them. For the modern empath, these stories are not distant tragedies. They are mirrors. You may not live under the scrutiny of the press or hold a brush that changes art forever, but you know what it means to step into a room and immediately feel its weight. You know the exhaustion of being the one others confide in, even when your own soul is aching. You know what it means to wear a smile for the world while carrying storms inside. And here lies the urgent question Jung leaves us. Must the empath story always bend toward burnout? Or can individuation, facing the shadow, tearing the hidden contract, reclaiming choice, lead to a new ending, where the light no longer burns, but guides? If the empath story often feels written in fire, Jung believed it didn't have to end in ashes. The same flame that scorches can also forge. The difference lies in whether we live by the unconscious contract, or whether we choose to face the shadow and reclaim our gift as our own. Shadow work begins in honesty. Not the polished honesty of telling others what they want to hear, but the raw honesty of turning inward. For the empath, this means asking uncomfortable questions. Am I helping out of love or out of fear? Do I carry their pain because I choose to, or because I'm afraid of what will happen if I let go? Jung taught that the unconscious mind drives us until we make it conscious. What we refuse to face, we are doomed to repeat. This is why individuation, the path toward becoming whole, demands that empaths stop running from their shadow. Behind the glowing compassion often hides resentment, fatigue, even anger. And these emotions are not evidence of failure. They are signals. They show where the fire has been burning unattended. To admit them is not betrayal, it is integration. Practical steps of shadow work may seem small, almost fragile. Writing in a journal where you return the feelings you've borrowed. Allowing yourself 10 minutes of solitude without apology. Saying a gentle no once a day, not as cruelty, but as a boundary that honors your own soul. These acts are not indulgence. They are survival. They are how fire stops being wildfire and becomes hearth. But here's the paradox Jung loved to reveal. Facing your shadow does not diminish your light. It sharpens it. Boundaries do not reduce empathy. They preserve it. The inner child who once trembled in the dark learns that safety is no longer dependent on carrying everyone else's weight. Slowly, the empath realizes they were never meant to extinguish their gift, nor to be consumed by it, but to master it. Think of it like this. Fire in the wild can devour forests, but fire in the hands of a blacksmith creates tools, art, strength. The energy is the same, but its direction changes everything. The empath's journey is the same. With shadow work, trauma becomes wisdom. With individuation, the unconscious contract becomes conscious choice. And so the empath begins to stand differently. Not as the one who must always carry others, but as the one who chooses when and how to use their gift. Not as a victim of fire, but as its keeper. After shadow work reveals the fire, the question becomes, what do I do with it? Theory alone cannot hold the weight of daily life. For the empath, individuation is not a distant concept. It must be practiced every hour, in ordinary spaces, where the gift is most tested. Jung believed that transformation is not a grand event, but a steady integration. And for empaths, this means turning compassion into conscious choice rather than compulsion. It begins in the smallest of actions. Saying no without apology. Allowing yourself to leave a room heavy with conflict instead of absorbing it. Choosing silence not because you're silenced, but because you're guarding your peace. These are not acts of selfishness. They are acts of self-preservation, the first steps of reclaiming your fire. Notice how your empathy moves through the day. At work, when a colleague vents, do you listen because you want to, or because you feel you must? With family, when tension rises, do you carry the unspoken weight, or do you let others hold their own storms? These moments are the true empath test, not quizzes online, but choices in real time. Each yes or no you offer shapes whether your empathy remains a blessing or becomes a curse. Here, the role of the inner child cannot be ignored. That child, who once feared the dark and relied on light as salvation, still whispers in you today, keep everyone safe, keep everything calm. But individuation means responding differently. It means gently telling that child, you are safe now. The world is not yours to fix. Your light doesn't have to burn itself out to prove it shines. This is the alchemy of empathy, transforming inherited patterns into chosen actions. Alchemy was never about turning lead into literal gold. It was about transformation of the self. For empaths, the alchemy is learning to transmute borrowed pain into personal wisdom. The feelings you once carried as a burden now become signals, teaching you where to place your limits, how to discern what is yours and what belongs to others. In this way, the very fire that once consumed you becomes the forge of clarity. And when this shift occurs, everything changes. Conversations no longer end with you drained and silent. They end with you grounded, having given what you chose to give. Relationships no longer feel one-sided. They become balanced, because your empathy is no longer endless fuel for someone else's fire. It is light you share wisely. People sense the difference. They may resist at first, but over time they respect the flame that stands firm without collapsing. This is the power of empathy aligned with consciousness. It burns steady, not wild. This is what Jung meant when he spoke of individuation, not perfection, not escape, but wholeness. The empath who once lived by the hidden contract now walks freely, no longer bound to compulsions. You no longer confuse exhaustion with purpose. You no longer confuse silence with peace. You stand as both light and shadow, integrated, unafraid. And in that wholeness, your gift ceases to be a curse. It becomes your compass. The fire doesn't end in ashes. It becomes the hearth of your inner strength. Do you remember the child afraid of the dark, the shadows on the wall, the monsters imagined in silence? That fear was real, but so was the relief when the light appeared. What we didn't know then was that both were necessary. The dark made us imagine. The light made us believe. One without the other was incomplete. For the empath, this truth never disappears. The gift feels like light, radiant, comforting, healing. But Jung revealed what children cannot yet see. Every bright flame casts a shadow, and every shadow points to a light. To live in only one is to live in half a truth. Your journey has shown you this. The hidden contract no longer defines you. The fire no longer has to consume you. Shadow work taught you to face what you once feared: anger, boundaries, the guilt of saying no. Individuation showed you that your empathy does not need to burn itself out to prove its worth. You are both light and shadow, flame and calm, yin and yang. And perhaps the most powerful realization is this: your fire does not need to end in ashes. It can be the hearth that warms instead of the wildfire that destroys. But for the fire to matter, there must first be cold. For the light to guide, there must first be darkness. Night gives meaning to dawn. Winter makes us long for spring. The silence of loneliness teaches us to recognize the beauty of connection. The empath's gift is no different. It shines not in spite of shadow, but because of it. Just as a candle means nothing at noon but becomes a miracle at midnight, your light finds its purpose when the world around you forgets how to see. Look again at the life of Princess Diana. Her empathy did not erase her pain, nor did it shield her from the shadow she carried. Yet it was this very sensitivity, the willingness to touch the untouchable, to embrace those the world ignored, that made her unforgettable. She broke protocols with a single touch, holding the hands of AIDS patients when fear kept others away. She sat with the lonely, comforted the rejected, walked through minefields in forgotten places. Her light was not flawless, it was human, and that humanity is what made millions love her. Diana reminds us that being true to your empathic nature, even in a world that misunderstands it, leaves a mark that outlives the body. Her story shows that empathy, when lived authentically, can move nations, soften hearts, and rewrite the way society sees compassion. She was not perfect, no empath is, but she was real. And it was in that realness that she conquered both love and respect. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." For the empath, this is more than philosophy, it is survival. Your light is not diminished by your shadow, it is defined by it. And your shadow is not your enemy, it is the ground that allows your flame to stand. So when you walk forward, no longer fear the dark or worship the light blindly. Instead, carry both. Like Diana, let your empathy be human, imperfect, yet transformative. Because the empath's rarest gift is not just to feel, it is to transform. To stand as proof that a soul can burn without turning to ash, and in doing so, leave behind not just light, but legacy. If this journey spoke to you, share your thoughts in the comments. Your story may be the light someone else needs. And if you want to walk deeper into Jungian psychology, empathy, and the hidden strength of the sensitive soul, Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and join this community. Together, we keep the fire alive, one that burns not to destroy, but to guide.